So the Seattle Police Department will no longer send officers to alarm calls without active evidence of a crime happening in real time. So you got an alarm going off? Hey, that's not good. Expect a police officer? No, that's out of the question. We're not doing that anymore. Let's get into it. Here we go. This is a direct result of Defund the Police and Seattle, my hometown, their complete disregard for public safety as far as police officers go. We've gone down this road where we've vilified police officers. Defund the police was just the greatest thing of 2020. I mean, we're going to take money away from the police department. We're going to fund some social workers. We're going to fund some stuff in the community, which should be happening already. But anytime you take away from the cops, now you've got a situation and then vilify them in the media. Oh, police are just running around murdering people left and right. Racism. You vilified policing and people don't want to be a cop. So invariably in big blue liberal run cities, you don't have enough policing. And so when you don't have enough cops, you got to make do with what you got, and you got to work them into the ground on overtime. It's the only way to cobble together public safety. And then you enact policies like this, which basically means we don't have enough cops. This is what we're doing. That's the way I see it. I'm a real estate guy, so that might be oversimplified, but I've also covered a lot of these stories. And, if you walk around Seattle, you don't have enough cops. Let's just say that. You got a lot of criminal activity going on. You got 8,500 tags, graffiti, urban art. What a bunch of crap. And that happens right, under everybody's noses because you don't have enough police officers to make that a priority. So as the Seattle Police Department navigates ways to hire new officers, and one of them was, I think, a $50,000 bonus, signing bonus. I know that was batted around, but, Seattle's elevated its what they pay police officers now as well. But, nobody wants to be a cop, and I don't blame them. It's a difficult job in a city that doesn't respect law enforcement. So this is what you get. It's had to make decisions about where to send its remaining staff. According to a letter from Seattle Police Department Interim Chief of Police Sue Rohr, because Adrian Diaz left after he was charged with or was accused of sexually assaulting multiple women, and then he declared he was gay. And the mayor just had to let him go. So we've got another interim chief of police. In October 1st, the department will only send officers to calls from alarm companies that have evidence, either audio, video, panic alarms, or eyewitnesses, that a person is illegally entering or trying to enter a home or business. So what if your alarm system doesn't have that? Doesn't have the video, doesn't have the audio, doesn't have the panic alarm, but you still got an alarm. Tough luck. I am so sorry about your family member, right? Rohr said that the Seattle Police Department will no longer respond to calls from alarm companies based only on sensor or motion activations. After crunching the numbers, Rohr said that of the 13,000 burglary alarm calls Seattle Police Department received last year, less than 4% had a crime associated with them. Okay. All right. So you've got a vast majority of these calls, somebody's setting off the alarm. I've never been a huge believer in alarms. I don't know. They seem like a hassle to me. We had an alarm system when my kids were little, and my kids, they set it off. I set it off. It was just ridiculous. We could never really get it all worked out. We ended up just not really ever using it. It was so problematic. So less than 4% had a crime associated with them. With depleted resources, there you go. Seattle Police Department has had depleted resources for how long? Years and years and years. And this is what happens when you can't attract enough cops to keep your citizenry, basically safe. With depleted resources, we cannot prioritize a patrol response when there is very low probability that criminal activity is taking place. But yeah, say of that 4%, maybe something is going on. Well, you know what I mean? There's going to be some folks that are going to be negatively impacted by this, but it's a numbers game. Hey, we can't send an officer out on all this stuff. We got a lot of other calls we got to deal with. This is just what happens when you don't have enough cops, period. You got to make some choices. You got to figure out what to do, how to make it happen. It's like, where was it? Man, it was a podcast I did a while ago. Oh man, I wish I could remember. You'll probably remember. Let me know in the comments where it was, where I think it was between the hours of like 4 a.m. and or 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. They basically were going to have all the 911 police officer calls go to an answering service. Remember that? I mean, that is in direct response to not enough cops. We know that this will require that you notify customers of this change. They're talking to these security companies, and that additional effort may be required to work with them on technology upgrades or alternative options. We appreciate your understanding and cooperation. Sorry about your business model there. That whole line of alarms no longer relevant. And it kind of makes you think, is an alarm system relevant anyway? Because even if you did have somebody, actively in your home, how long is it going to take a police officer to get there? However, the branch manager for ADI Global Distribution, Steve Audio, thinks that Seattle Police Department's decision will only make crime worse. And it probably will. But it's not a matter that they don't have too many options. It's not like, okay, this one's going to make crime better and this one's going to make crime worse. They have to take the best of the worst, which is we don't have enough cops to send out. How are we going to distribute the calls with what we've got? How do we make do? This is one of those scenarios. All right. Yeah, I guess we'll do that. I think the reason that they're doing this is they figure they don't have enough officers. Correct. He told Cairo News Radio on Monday, but the problem is it's going to make the city even less safe. Kind of like the whole concept of defunding the police makes a city less safe. Not supporting law enforcement in mass numbers, which Seattle actively does, makes your community less safe. But these knuckleheads that go down that road, they don't get it. They're just living in this bubble where, well, if we just gave enough unarmed social workers the right to go out there and fight those battles to de-escalate those violent situations, to de-escalate that basically naked guy who's rolled himself in his own feces that's on meth and has a knife, give those social workers the ability to go out there and combat that kind of crime. Good luck with that, right? Good luck with that. Audio said that although 80 to 85% of the alarms are most likely false, he wishes the Seattle Police Department had worked with the alarm companies. To do what? What are you actually going to do? We can work together with the police department to come up with other ideas, he said. Well, cops have to make a decision. Management of cops have to make a decision. This is the decision they're making. Here you are. This is what you got. This is what you're working with. Audio said that he is worried that someone could break into a gun store while the owner is responding. Then they're faced with a criminal. He added that pharmacies, banks, and schools could be broken into with no response. However, one of his biggest worries is children. That was my first thought, right? This is exactly my thought here. If I had a daughter, let's say my daughter's bedroom window has a sensor on it and somebody breaks in there. Well, now nobody's coming to help, he said. And if I'm not there or she's on the lower floor or something like that, who's going to be there to help her? The answer is nobody. She's totally alone. She is exposed. And that is what you get when you live in Seattle. But those are things folks don't want to deal with. They don't want to think about because that whole thing back in 2020, and that's just part of it. This has been ongoing for decades. You've got a state and a city. I shouldn't say state Because you've got other areas of Washington. You've got Eastern Washington where they don't have cities typically that are super low on cops the way that Seattle is. You might have, fewer police than you want, but you've basically got public safety taken care of. In Seattle, that's not happening. We've got for a city of 750,000 people, the number of police officers we have is scary. It's literally scary. You're like, if something bad happened, like catastrophic big event, Seattle would be dependent upon other jurisdictions to come in and help. And guess what? If it's a big enough event, they're going to be scrambling around doing their own thing, covering their own folks. So, good luck with that, Seattle. I hope it all goes well. Meanwhile, no police calls for you without the alarms that have are letting you know somebody's breaking in. Rahr said Seattle Police Department's highest priority is responding to violent incidents happening in real time. Correct. But what I would say there is some of these alarm calls are going to be that. But just because they don't have the right alarm set up, okay, all right, yeah, I get it. I mean, it makes absolute sense to me. Is it fair? Not particularly, but not having enough police officers because a bunch of knuckleheads in Seattle, defund the police, greatest concept ever, went that direction. And basically, as a society in Seattle, we don't really respect law enforcement. Then this is what you get. This is what you end up with. So for more questions on licensing and reporting requirements for alarm monitoring systems, she recommended the City of Seattle's website. Well, since the City of Seattle is doing this kind of thing, I would have to go with contacting the alarm companies. You need to get yourself a new alarm system. Or, you could live in a community where they don't have a massive shortage of police officers. Yeah, that's something to consider, isn't it? That's something to consider. Because if you are a diehard to live in the city of Seattle proper, I live in Bellevue, which is a suburb of Seattle. And we don't have police officer issues as far as hiring. We just don't. We never defunded the police. We're a more moderate community. We respect law enforcement. And when something goes sideways here, cops are called pretty quick. They literally are. We had a homeless dude not long ago. It's probably about 3 miles from where I'm sitting right now. We had a homeless dude a young lady who was living with a number of roommates close to Bellevue. It used to be community college, but now it's just Bellevue College. She went out, I think, for a run at like 5:45 in the morning. And a homeless dude just let himself in and he drank some milk. He snuggled himself up in bed. He took a little nap. He went in the living room. He went in the kitchen, bathroom, used the restroom. He did all of this. And the girls are just like, don't really know what to do here. But they called 911 and police were there very quickly. That's Bellevue. Seattle, cops will come if they're available. If they're not on, like the article said here, a higher elevated call as far as priority, they'll show up. That's their job. They want to help people. But if you don't have the numbers, you can't do it. In Bellevue, it happens. Somebody's out pretty quick. In Seattle, it's crapshoot to the point where alarm companies, alarm's going, alarm's working. Sorry, there's somebody in your house, accosting you. But policy is policy. So this is just one of those things where leadership and political policy roots itself in some reality, and this is it. And guaranteed, this news story will gain very little traction anywhere, except here on News for Reasonable People and a handful of other outlets. So that's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. I'd love to have you subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.